We're joined now by Christina Finn, political correspondent from the Journal.ie, and by Derek Mooney, public affairs consultant and former communications advisor with Fianna Fáil. Good morning to both of you and welcome to the programme. Christina, if I can start with you, the statement from Jim Gavin last night admitting that he made a mistake suggests an admission that he did wrong by his former tenant and that he did owe that money. If that is the case, and we haven't got full clarity on that yet, was exiting the race his only option?
I think it was after yesterday's debate. I think the questions that were robustly put to him by Anya Lawler didn't get a clarification. It wasn't put to bed in that debate. And ultimately, I think the cogs were turning towards the end of his presidential race yesterday. Given that issue just couldn't be clarified for people. Obviously, we've heard from Fianna Fáil about the rigorous, investigation into that piece and the comment that Fianna Fáil had given to the newspaper. And I think ultimately there must have been some serious discussions yesterday to result in that statement being issued very late last night.
Derek Mooney, where does this leave Fianna Fáil and the party leader Taoiseach Micheál Martin, who handpicked Jim Gavin as the candidate?
It leaves them over an awful lot of questions to answer, plus they put a budget tomorrow and an election in a couple of weeks' time. I think what you'll find with Fianna Fáil is that there will be, if you look back to I'll jump a little bit. If you go back to the 2020 election, there was a lot of inquiries after that, and there was the Fleming report. That took a couple of months. It seemed to have been kind of smothered over when it was eventually published. I think there'll be no tolerance for anything like that this time around. There'll be questions about what from the recommendations from the Fleming report were ever implemented and whatever happened to those. There will be more than just an inquiry about what was the sequence, what was the chronology. There will be how did you have, as Fianna mentioned earlier, as other people have mentioned, how did you have a succession of names emerging into the public domain throughout June, July, August? How does a political party function like this? What are the rules? What is the basis for making decisions?
Billy Kelleher said in his interview with Audrey earlier that this was a serious miscalculation and there must be consequences. Do you think those consequences will be for Micheál Martin and his leadership?
I think ultimately they will, because what's the one thing Micheál Martin has succeeded in doing is having a party that he controls it, because there's nothing anti-democratic about this, but that he has become such a singular force within the political party that a lot of the powers that previously resided in the parliamentary party have now effectively gone to the leadership. A lot of the powers that previously resided with the national executive have gone to the leadership, and that was a compromise that Fianna Fáil members are prepared to make back in the early 2012, 2013 when they wanted to come back from the wilderness, and I was part of that organisation at that time. But there are no consequences, as Billy Kelleher has said. Now, what that means is that the parliamentary party will take back power. Has to. It has to become a co-decision maker with the leadership over the years ahead. But can Micheál Martin embrace that? Does he show a willingness? Is there any kind of contrition? Will he open out to members? Or will there be an attempt to shut this down? And I think the ball is now very much in his court over the next few days.
Christina Finn, what's likely to be happening in the Fianna Fáil parliamentary party now today in the wake of this news?
Well, utter shock really from a lot of members of the parliamentary party that I've been speaking to so far. Really consternation about the next moves. A lot of people talking about Jack Chambers and the role that he played within the campaign, saying budget or no budget tomorrow, he'll have to come out and explain exactly what went on here. There'll be massive questions for the party HQ about, as we've mentioned, the choice of candidate, the vetting, but ultimately as well the warning that was given to Jim Gavin and his family about the type of campaign that the presidential one is. It is a very brutal campaign, one that we've seen, I suppose, come to fruition now in him stepping aside. But massive questions for Micheál Martin and his choice. It was a risky one for him. A lot of talk during the summer that he wanted a candidate that was, either an academic or a person that was involved with charity. He was speaking a lot about a president for all that was above party politics. And he didn't seem to be wanting to choose someone like a bruiser of a politician. And ultimately now we've seen that's a fatal error of judgment on his part, and there'll be big questions for him to answer. I believe there's a parliamentary party meeting taking place on Wednesday that would be kind of routine, but I think it'll be certainly one to watch where a lot of views will be aired.
Derek, the presidential race is now a two-horse race effectively, and while Jim Gavin's name will be on the ballot paper, I mean, it's fair to say, I think, that it's unlikely he'll get substantial support. What does it mean now for Heather Humphreys and for Catherine Connolly?
I think turnout was always going to be a problem at this election. If you look at the last presidential election, now in fairness it was, if most people did accept that Michael D. Higgins was probably going to get re-elected, but turnout was 44%. But even historically before that, presidential election turnouts tend to be on the lower side, tend to be around the 51-52% mark, and have been for a while. I think this election will struggle to get to 40%. I believe that even before the current debacle. I think Fianna Fáil voters will not be as inclined. I mean, core Fianna Fáil voters will not be as inclined to come out to vote. So that'll bring turnout down.
Will they be asked, do you think, to vote for Heather Humphreys now?
That's a very difficult thing to predict, and in as much as that's a choice that Micheál Martin's going to have to make, and again there will be consequences for that. I think Micheál Martin may say, look, this is what I am doing, and I would advise other people to do the same. But can Fianna Fáil, having just gone through what it's gone through, having had the process it's had, having had a candidate and then lost that candidate, is Fianna Fáil credible to go out and advise people as to who should vote for president? I just don't think it's going to. I think that's going to take a while for that to settle. And
Christina, for Jim Gavin himself, he's somebody who has a long record of public service in the Defence Forces, as chair of the North East Inner City Task Force in Dublin, chair of the Citizens' Assembly. He's presided over the rule changes which improved Gaelic football and won 6 All-Ireland as a manager of the Dublin senior men's football team. It's a huge personal humiliation for him, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so, and one as well, a difficult time, I'm sure, for his family, and that was referenced there within his statement last night. I think most people will understand from his explanation that the time that this was all going on, there seemed to be some serious financial difficulties, and as one person said to me, no one would wish a presidential election on their worst enemy, and ultimately I think Jim Gavin just wasn't politically aware enough to handle the intense scrutiny and rigorous interrogation that any presidential candidate is put under during a campaign like this.
Derek, would you agree with that? I mean, does this tell us that the brutal nature of presidential campaigns is for people who are tried and tested in the political arena?
In a short answer, yes, but we knew that before this presidential election. We knew it before the last one, and we knew it the one before that. We've long known this, and it is just it is hard to grasp that people who were taking charge of a campaign couldn't sit down with a candidate and say, look, do you know what happened with Mary Davis and Joan Freeman and Sean Gallagher and David Norris? Do you know the toll it took on them, those campaigns? Do you know the level of scrutiny? And I just cannot believe that somebody didn't have that conversation.
And Christina, what impact do you think it'll have then on the ability of political parties to attract ordinary citizens, to put it that way, in the future to contest presidential elections?
I think it'll be hugely damaging. As mentioned before, it was always going to be a high task for anybody, I think, to enter this race. And every time there seems to be a presidential election, someone does seem to falter in it, and a story or something seems to emerge that results perhaps not in such an upending of a campaign like this, but something of a serious controversy seems to bring a lot of things to an end. And I think that will bring into question many people that are approached in the future about whether they want to put their name in the ring for a presidential election.
Christina Finn, political correspondent with thejournal.ie, and Derek Mooney, public affairs consultant and former communications advisor with Fianna Fáil. Thank you both for joining us on the programme this morning. It's 8:54.